Welcome to Artificial Insights, the podcast where we learn to build AI people need and use by interviewing product leaders who have launched AI products. I'm your host, Daniel Maneri, and today I'm joined by Prerna Kaul. Prerna has a 14-year track record of building many millions of dollars of AI and ML products across public companies and startups in health tech, e-commerce, and enterprise, such as Walmart, Alexa, and a little place you might never have heard of called Moderna. In her latest role, she's building the end-to-end AI and data platform for a wellness startup called Panasonic Well. Thank you for being here, Prerna. I appreciate you being here, and I'm excited even just to learn myself. I find that I have a lot of learnings going back and watching the recordings that I've done of interviewing people. I'm learning new things the second time around. And for me, I really like doing a podcast where I get to talk to people doing cool stuff because it's inspiring and it allows me to learn things that I would just never learn otherwise.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here, and thanks for having me. That's great.
Yeah. And the question I think that's on everybody's mind with a podcast like this is, Prerna, are you an AI?
Sometimes I believe I believe I am.
Ooh.
I certainly act in those ways, but no, I would say I am not.
No. Okay. I like that though. What do you see as that boundary between sometimes I'm an AI and sometimes I'm not?
Oh, interesting. Huh. So I do think that, for me, when I think of like artificial general intelligence, I think of all the possibilities and ways in which we can quantify intelligence and whether we believe, essentially, it's similar to how one would think about the Turing test, where it's impossible to know between a human and an AI. Impossible to distinguish between the both of them. What an artificial intelligence is versus what real intelligence is. So there's ways in which we can look at intelligence. One aspect of this is like logical and objective mathematical reasoning. And I do think that, at least in some of the use cases we have seen so far, gaming, for example, is one big area. Chess is another. We are now starting to see, even in more machine learning related use cases, how reasoning, the ability to reason, is something we have seen models do repeatedly in a sort of a consistent way. And I do think that one area where I pride myself as being this like logical, planned and reasoned person. So in those ways, I am like an AI. But no, otherwise, I think for the most part, I'm fairly human.
Okay, for the most part. Maybe we won't ask anybody who sees you early in the morning.
Yeah. Certainly some, like, I think a lot of nerds listening to this call might relate to me.
Absolutely. And just for everybody's context, what do you do for your day job? And just give us some highlights.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a group product manager. I work on the AI platform for a startup known as Panasonic Well. We are building an AI assistant for family wellness. So think of end-to-end healthcare application that leverages AI for personalized coaching and helps users maintain and build habits around a healthy lifestyle. So my work is to define the product strategy, vision, roadmap, and work very closely with engineering and design on the execution to realize the minimum viable product of this app. So what I do on a daily basis is basically brainstorm with these teams, come up with what we think are the right set of capabilities to test, and then go prototype and build it so we can present it to users, get feedback, and try to scale it as a product.
Oh, very cool. And you haven't always worked in the wellness space. I know you've got a couple of big names on your resume. So how does that relate to what you've been now?
Yeah. So for my career, one optimization function has been being close to the technology. So be it when I started off as an engineer working on big data platforms. So basically started my career working on Hadoop, learning about different DBs in that space, Cassandra, and like using all of that technology to build out these trading platforms. When I pivoted to work on product management, I also started at the platform space, building out developer platforms at a company called Points in Toronto, and then shifting to work on building payments platforms at Walmart Labs and then Amazon. So I think the optimization function for me consistently has been being very close to the technology. Obviously, I was always interested in machine learning and just learning how to use these models for different use cases. And that's what attracted me to this field. And I also had a sort of a side interest, and always has been an interest. Healthcare has been an interest. So I try to combine my sort of love for technology with this new space. And that's how I ended up here.
Oh, very cool. I feel like I have a similar journey actually because I started technical. I actually worked with data platforms at a company that needed to process advertising data. So I'm familiar with Hadoop and some technologies in that space. And then I've moved myself to be more entrepreneurial because I really just enjoy the business side of things and helping people get what they need and understanding the problem rather than just diving into technology. So I guess what's the biggest difference for you between being an engineer and doing what you do now?
That's a great question. And it's something that certainly is an acquired skill too, because as an engineer, I think my default instinct is to solve things. I tend to be very fixer-upper and I'm always in problem-solving mode. But one of the things I've really learned from a PM standpoint is to take a step back and analyze the space before trying to jump in and solve. I actually do think, and one thing I've realized is that great engineering leaders, as they grow in their careers and become more senior, they also become more product oriented. So they become product thinkers just by virtue of having solved big, large scale problems and understanding that rather than jump in and fix everything, we need to take a broader view and evaluate what are the key themes and try to solve in a more reusable way. So that platform and product thinking also comes naturally to engineering leaders as they rise. But that's one big shift that happened in my mindset as I pivoted to product management.
And you did that not by becoming an engineering leader per se, but then by shifting towards the product side. And what was that first jump for you?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's interesting that you asked that. So when I was at Citigroup, when I was that sort of building out those the big data trading platforms and working on these equities and bond trading platforms, I actually got a lot of exposure to the business. So I would work directly with these financial traders across the board, like basically in Europe and in New York and in other like Asian countries as well. And I got really interested in thinking through like what is the business problem we are trying to solve. Even as an engineer, I got that exposure. And I realized that the thing that I love the most is when I solve these problems, understanding what users want and then going to build something that fixes it. The technology is interesting, but if you can marry the two, that's what really drives me, and that's what something I'm really passionate about. So you have a problem and you're like, oh, I can come up with a really interesting solution to solve this, and I actually go build it and launch it and then see it in the hands of users. I mean, that's just the magic of building products, right? That's what we all love. And
Yeah.
that was a big shift that happened. I basically realized that, oh, I'm getting to work with the business. What I really love is like marrying the two, being that person in the middle. And turns out there is a job title for it, and I can actually do that role. So that's why I moved.
Amazing. So tell me a story about one of your favorite times where you got something into a user's hands.
Yeah. So I actually had a very interesting experience building out my Walmarts at Walmart Labs. I built out their first mobile app for the Canadian marketplace. It was launched in 400 brick and mortar stores. And what was interesting is it started off in a small town in Canada where there's a huge aging population. So these folks tend to have caregivers or somebody looking after them, and they're living in these senior nursing homes. And they really love visiting Walmart for some reason. Like I just found that super interesting because I think what it is as I did walkthroughs and tried to work with them, I realized it's that journey of I get up in the morning, I make my grocery list, I make my to-do list, drive out of my house or somebody drives me, and I get to walk around the store. I get to have that experience. I'm walking, I'm doing something active and being out in the open. And then I buy something, I have an interaction, and I leave. When Walmart wanted to make a shift towards more scan and go technology, one missing piece was it hadn't really solved for its end users, its end consumers. So these are the sorts of people that would visit the store. And I had the opportunity to essentially do walkthroughs with my customers, build out user prototypes, and test and learn in the process, and then launch that first mobile application that became my Walmart in 8 next generation stores that Walmart was launching. So I launched that end-to-end fast lane experience for such users, for busy moms, for millennials, for different populations, and got them to use the mobile app, including features like being able to scan alcohol, because at that time, LCBO was very restrictive about who they would allow to sell alcohol. And Walmart was given that first license, including ability to pay within the platform, even for folks who are seniors who are not as well versed with the technology. So thinking of accessibility issues there, thinking of what it would be like to weigh and pay for fresh produce. All of these unique features and use cases, and actually build that app and launch it, scale it across those 400 brick and mortar stores. So that was a very unique experience I had, and definitely a very exciting project to be a part of.
And was there a user, like an older person that you've took feedback from and changed the app with?
Yeah, that's very interesting. So it happened around the time of maybe a week before our launch. We were doing some testing in store, and a lady came up to myself and a colleague of mine, and she was very upset because we were building a mobile app that could potentially take on roles or jobs of the associates on the floor. And it was very pertinent to our conversation on AI as well, because I know it's a topic that folks think about a lot. Or there's certainly a fear, a lot of like fake news, but also a lot of fear associated with AI. So that happened to me, where she felt that we are automating something that a human could do, and we're taking away somebody's role. So that was a situation I had to mitigate that and help bridge the perception that, oh, these associates, we are training them, we're up-leveling them, giving them new opportunities. They become consultants in the process. The idea is to augment them, give them superpowers versus take away their roles. And yeah, that was my first experience. I still recall it very vividly. It was about 7 years ago at this point.
Oh, wow. And that conflict between automation, but AI as well as a form of automation, and human jobs, I think you're absolutely right that it worries a lot of people. And just to be a little more abstract for a second, how do you see that conflict?
Yeah, so I do think that I'll put it this way: with any new technology that has come in, and there's a lot of history behind it. Whatever roles humans previously played, so they had certain skills, they were trained on certain levels. We've seen that when a new technology comes in that takes away the need for that skill, there's a reaction to it, like a backlash or a reaction to it. And there are two reasons for it. First, that humans feel like the demand for their skills is going to reduce, which means that how will they feed themselves? How will they survive and take care of themselves and their families? And second, they feel that they will potentially not be able to upskill so easily, because this new technology will take on everything that they knew or have been trained to do for years. On the first point, I do see that we are seeing in the short term, at least from an economic standpoint, that folks who were skilled in certain areas might see a reduced demand for their skills. But I don't think, from what we've observed, it's a long-term effect. So I can give you an example. We know that there are code generation models. There are LLMs for code generation that are coming about.
I use them all the time.
Yeah, exactly. We use Claude all the time. We use some of the new LLMs coming in as well. And to be honest, like we've heard, like even in our own individual organizations, like, is this going to reduce the need for the number of engineers we need on ground to do the work? Will that happen? And in other ways, that's one perception. The other is, will this improve our employee productivity by let's say 20 to 30%? both could happen. Both would be true. In the long term, we hope it's the second, where it improves engineering productivity,
Yeah.
and that it helps them upskill and scale. But in the short term, we are seeing those side effects. And I guess the only mitigation to that is remaining open, curious, and continuing to upskill. It's just the nature and powerful course of being in technology. And I don't think AI is like a one-time event where we are seeing this happen. It has been the case every couple of years. We had to relearn new technologies, relearn how to do product in a certain way, or relearn a new set of skills to ensure that we remain competitive and our skill set remains in demand. I don't know if this answers the question, but that's how I sort of think about it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Essentially, the AI is not unique in its job displacement or our need to react to it because it's a tool. We can use it, we can get better with it. And in my own job, like you mentioned, I use code generation models. It does make me faster, and that's great. So in my life, I'm more productive, but then in general, yeah, it seems like it might make it harder to get an entry-level job. There might be fewer of them for a while. So I like that approach. Learn it, upskill, and tools go out of style all the time.
Exactly. Yeah, I was thinking earlier about how pertinent that is to product owner versus product managers. That's another area where folks talk a lot about. And previously there was an agile product owner role, and that has quite swiftly changed to product manager, because there's a need for somebody really taking a more strategic overview and understanding business priorities as well as customer priorities. So yeah, we've seen it in every space lately, so it's definitely not unique.
And has that skill transition for product owner to product managers affected your career?
Not so much. I think most companies that I have worked with, they started with the need for a product manager, and agile was one mechanism to achieving it, but that wasn't the full role as it was defined. But it's my understanding folks who have been in industry for 20 plus years have had that experience.
Okay, I understand. So going back to AI products, you've managed a lot of them, I think. You've been a product manager in quite a few AI-powered products. So would you tell us about one of them that excites you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to tell you about a time where I launched the generative AI platform at a company called Moderna. So Moderna is the
Nobody's
vaccine.
ever heard of that one before.
Nobody's ever heard of it. Anybody who's been through the pandemic has never heard of them. So it was interesting. I think around the time we joined, Moderna was shifting from the one show COVID-19 vaccine company to really thinking about platform capabilities on their end, more on the medical side of things, on the pharmaceutical side of things, and thinking of how to scale their business. And the company came up with the goal of launching 15 vaccines over the next 5 years, and quickly realized that in order to scale that rapidly, they would not be able to do so with the current pharmaceutical processes as planned. So the pharma business is very complex, and there's a lot of third-party intermediaries. If I were to take an example, in order to if we made no change, in order to launch one trial of one vaccine in the next 5 years, it would cost $2 billion. And this company wanted to launch 15 vaccines in the next 5 years, and each vaccine takes up around 3 clinical trials. So we were basically talking about $90 billion. And that's just a lot of cash that we did not have. So in order to scale, I think we, as a company, decided that a strategic investment in AI, machine learning, and also better software tooling is necessary. So thinking of everything, like everything built from the ground up, from cloud technology to the use of machine learning for certain drug discovery processes, to the use of AI for productivity reasons and operational efficiency, to thinking about how to make our pharma operations a bit more efficient as well. So we had to rethink a lot of different processes. So when I came in, I defined the product strategy for how we could help the company scale along the lines of that goal of 15 vaccines in the next 5 years. by defining a platform that would help us unlock productivity for employees. So all the application layer work was based off of OpenAI. We had a partnership with OpenAI, and my team and I built the generative AI platform to support that. So this was more on the API layer and everything from what document pipeline do we use, how do we support unstructured data, vector DBs, what are the different data sources, what do we need to do from a fine-tuning standpoint is what my team and I built. The outcome of which was we were able to support 750 GPTs in a matter of 5 to 6 months to save
Wow.
employees around 30% towards that 15.5 goal.
Wow. That is a lot of GPTs.
That's a lot of GPTs, but it was interesting because I think one big realization we had is it's not just build it and they will come. We have to really focus on that learning and education aspect as well.
So I'm interested in two aspects of this, especially, which are like, how did that even come to be a project? Who decided that it had to? But then also, how did you end up getting that adoption? So why don't you start with adoption? Because that, to me, as a developer, sounds great, but also, how did that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So from my end, one area I was very deeply invested in was the customer discovery process. So I'll give you two examples to highlight that process. So number one, there was a team within my organization that wanted to generate the right prescription information for drugs that they were administering. So thinking of like they have all these clinical trials, they are testing 50, 100 different variants of certain vaccines, and all of these vaccines need to have drug information. There is a cost associated with it. That cost runs in the millions of dollars. We were thinking, what if we could use an LLM to generate that information? What would that look like? And is it even possible? How do we
Yeah.
ensure regulatory compliance around it?
Yes.
So some very important and pertinent questions, and especially thinking through hallucination and
Yes.
accuracy, how do we minimize that? So we had to really think through what are the types of problems we are trying to solve. I conducted nearly 120 plus customer discovery interviews to like come up with the right themes and then make sure the platform supports that. That was one very key sort of project I led and made sure we were working backwards from the customer to come up with like the right set of platform components that we built. And that is, I think, was a key element in getting us adoption because we were chatting to them and asking them what they want and then building according to that versus deciding, more of a black box what to build and then just launching it.
Yeah. So in this case, you actually spoke to someone, were they an internal or external customer?
In this case, it was internal, around 120 plus teams within the organization, like clustered teams within the org.
And that was all to do with prescriptions.
Different use cases. So it spanned everything from human resources to finance, to operations, to these prescription information, to answering questions through health authority. So doing that in a structured way. So it was encompassing a set of different functions.
Okay. So then focusing on that prescriptions use case, because I'm very interested in like, how did you make sure that it was accurate, it didn't hallucinate, and then serve that need? And walk us through that process.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of what we were able to do had to do with our scope. So taking single prescription, taking a single set of documents versus translating to multiple languages, and then just ensuring we had defined RAG algorithms for that and had the right document pipeline in place to make that happen. So how it started, maybe I take the example of this and describe it. Chatting with a colleague, and she mentioned that it cost them in the millions of dollars to generate this information. There's a long time span. We contract this information out to external third parties. They cost a ton of money as well. And we just want to make sure it's easier, right? Like, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. We have these big goals. We just want to make sure the process is easier. So we decided to take that and get examples of exactly what information would be generated and what the inputs to that information would be. So understanding the inputs and outputs expected. We took those two things, took that back to the engineering team, and essentially started small scale testing. So stitched together a quick prototype with the open source technology. We did have access to everything from AWS OpenSearch to a V8 Vector DB to taking some existing connectors to our databases, putting all of that together and then connecting it with an LLM and just seeing what the outputs would be. Another thing that's interesting with this technology in particular is how much prototyping really matters and really helps. We started really small with maybe like five inputs through different data sources and a single output document, but then slowly and iteratively scale that. And I really want to emphasize the importance of prototyping with GenAI technologies. It's so important.
Yes, on my own testing, it's amazing what you can do, that it's 80%. But then that last 20% is extremely difficult. And if you can't nail it, then it's probably not worth going forward.
That's a good point.
And so did your team actually build something custom for that prescriptions use case? Like a custom GPT, I mean.
Yes. We built a custom GPT for it, connecting it with our internal data sources and a custom built RAG algorithm as well. So
Cool.
Whatever search capabilities are already available in GPT, we use that, but we had our own RAG algorithms to support it and make it a bit more accurate. We also implemented some work around chunking documents in a certain way. So there was some additional API magic happening in the background to make sure the accuracy has improved. And then we measured that and iterated over it. And of course, we did a lot of like on-ground testing before doing a broader launch. So we did a lot of internal testing to make sure that information was correct before it could be passed on to anybody.
You said that you started with the inputs and outputs. Does that mean that you were working off of a well-defined process and then the people doing it already knew everything that they had to do to look at it? Or did you have to discover some of that too?
Oh, interesting. So what was unique with this use case was that the folks we were speaking to, they came from a non-technical space. So they were from sort of the pharma industry and they were very deep in the pharmaceutical language and technology. And myself, as a product manager in this role, had to basically translate between somebody with a pharma background and somebody with an engineering deep technical background, which is an interesting role to play because I also did not have a background in pharma before I joined the company. So I think a lot of what I did was the very same, like analytically evaluating how do they currently run their process and fully understanding the steps they take to make sure that I understood all the inputs that go into the decision making. So for example, the team gave me examples of how clinical trial works and what are the different steps in a clinical trial process. Where do all of the documents go? Where do we store this information? Where does it live today? How accessible is it for search? Understanding all of the permissions, settings, and different associations with that particular document, search DB that we have. It was a system called Viva, not that I barely remember it now, but it was a very complex and convoluted system. It was difficult to manage. So just asking and drilling down into that process to understand where do all of the data sources live. Then understanding examples of what do they send to contractors today? What does their RFP look like? What do the contractors return? Who is involved in the rewriting and editing process for what is returned? So taking all of those steps and just breaking that problem down completely to understand what tech we can actually build to automate that or make that process more streamlined.
Wow. So you did a lot of work even just to see what's out there now. What do you have access to? How do you get it? Did you encounter anything unexpected in that process that just really changed the way you thought about it?
Yeah, I do think that, and I'll generalize this, I won't keep it specific to pharma. we have so much opportunity with AI and machine learning, especially with the use of generative AI in industries which have been paper-based and manual in the past, including healthcare, including logistics, manufacturing, supply chain related. I'm sure there are others that don't come to my top of mind right now, but um, one big realization I had is there is certainly a lot of waste that happens because of the number of manual steps and the number of intermediaries in the process and how current operations are driven. If one were to look at it coming from the technology lens, you would immediately see opportunities to improve things. But it's just that the tech industry has been very much focused on different domains, different sorts of enterprises. Now there's more of a merge happening. And I hope more of that continues because I really see a big opportunity and also the opportunity to make an impact because we're talking about vaccines, we're talking about health and people's lives. And it was just very meaningful to be part of that space.
Yeah, that's cool. Did you end up saving all millions of dollars, I guess, for this process?
We did, not for this particular project, but overall we did. We did end up saving a couple of $1 million for the company.
Wow.
And that, of course, continues as we continue to adopt the technology. That savings continues year over year, which is what matters. At the end of the day, it's like if it's a one-time thing, great. People forget about it. But the fact is that the more you continue to adopt and the more tech that gets, what's interesting is that it's what we built was additive to whatever OpenAI or Claude or other LLM vendors would be launching in future because it will only add to the company's productivity and whatever has been launched already versus take away from it.
I think that makes sense. You're not changing the foundation, you're building on it. And as the foundation gets better, the whole stack gets better.
Exactly.
And going back to how this project started, like who came up with it? Did they think it'd be done in 3 months? Like what birthed the project?
It's a great question. So the way the project started is last year in 2023, when OpenAI first announced the GPT models, the company realized there was an opportunity to leverage them. And so they built a forked version. The engineers in my team built a forked version of OpenAI's ChatGPT, and it was known as MChat. And it was essentially like a chat UI interface, some open source repo on GitHub, stitched together with the OpenAI API, and we were using that internally.
Cool.
Since then, we created a contract with ChatGPT for private and secure use of the data that would be stored within our servers and making sure data at rest and in transit is encrypted and so on and so forth. So we had that, but quickly realized that obviously this is not a fully scaled product solution. We need to build new things. And that's where the platform came in. We realized that we're going to have to build some our own internal capabilities and not just rely on this one set of the UI that we've built. And that's where we started investing more in the platform. So when I was hired, MChat was existing. We were thinking about what to build next, but we realized quickly that an investment in the platform is necessary. And then I was tasked with breaking down the problem further, running those interviews, making sure there were key themes that based on which we could build out our product strategy, and then bringing that back into the engineering teams to deliver a different set of capabilities.
So then it was like a AI first solution where sometimes I talk to people and they say AI happened to be the right tool for the job, or it didn't and we didn't use it. But in this case, it was, no, we know there's a use case for AI. Let's figure out how to get it to our people.
Exactly. And I think we, in a way, piggybacked off of the natural curiosity with ChatGPT. We started there, like the first adoption came, I want to use ChatGPT for my work. I would love to use this. It started there, but then folks quickly realized, I want to do a lot more with it. And it was it was interesting because folks were telling us, I know I can do a lot more with it. I just don't know how. So how about
cool.
if I do this? And then we had to break that down. Chat say, actually, you're speaking about automation. You're not speaking about AI. Or this is quantitative in nature. There isn't a language component, and this should probably be a machine learning use case. and here's how we can help you. Or this is generative AI related. So I had to do the work to break that down and explain the key themes and just make sure we are working on the right things.
Ah, neat. So then I guess a big part of your role is that education aspect of, okay, this is what you really mean when you ask for this feature. And sometimes AI, like ChatGPT AI, happens to be the right solution.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's not the right solution in every case. In some cases, it happens to be. How we can sort of share sort of how that would work out. But I think we were lucky. We were fortunate to leverage the natural curiosity folks had and just redirect our efforts in the right way as well.
So then, how did that mesh with the corporate goals then? That natural upswell of curiosity plus the we need to do budget savings.
It was very interesting because I think that in the beginning, what started off as natural curiosity that folks had, where they just wanted to, I'll give you a simple use case. Folks wanted to use this to write emails or write their weekly business review documents. And it was great. It was a really, natural and important use case. But in order for us to get buy-in for the bigger goals, so what would more directly impact the business, let's say the drug discovery process, or talking about this prescription information which we spoke about, or answering health authority questions, which was another big use case for us. There was a lot of legwork to be done there because additional technology needed to be built, and it wasn't so clear to everyone how we would realize the vision. So it was a merge between product and engineering, and it was with folks who quickly understood they could use this to write emails or use this to write weekly business reviews. They were already starting to do that work, but in order to shift and redirect efforts towards the company goals, that's where we had to, dive in and say, like, where's the biggest opportunity? Define that, have clarity on what do we work on first, and then come up with the additional components to build it.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I'm very interested in is how do you come up with those new use cases, and then say they come from a less technical stakeholder, how do you help them negotiate what is the right use case?
Interesting. In our case, we spent a lot of time and energy in quantifying the opportunity. So I can give you an example. A colleague of mine, he would run training and development reviews with executives on our team. And he would generate like spreadsheets full of ideas. And he would run these every 2 weeks. Every 3 weeks, there'd be like a spreadsheet full of like thousands of ideas. And he'd say, hey, Prerna, can you please take a look at this and make sure this gets built into the sprints? I'm like, thank you. Yeah, I can do that.
Sure.
So it started from that aspect where there were a ton of ideas coming in. I took a step back and I said, well, how should I start to think about the business opportunity here? So I broke down that work and I said, let me try and quantify which organizations, which work streams, and which ideas would most closely benefit the business in terms of achieving the 15.5 goal. So I worked with data analysts on my team to break down our organizational data and quantify what are the organizations, what is their current headcount, what are the productivity needs, the operational needs, and then what benefit can AI have? So those were literally columns in a spreadsheet and started to quantify that a bit. Those thousands of ideas, I clustered those together using some basic machine learning and a clustering algorithm, and put together from 1,000 ideas, narrowed those down to maybe 70 or 100 ideas, and then overlap that or merge that with the business data to say, what are the 15 things we can do or focus on, and then created a roadmap to actually see how would we realize it from an engineering standpoint. So it was a lot of taking a step back, thinking from first principles and thinking, do all of these 1,000 ideas really matter, or should we start to merge them together? Are there commonalities, themes, and work on the right things?
That is a lot of data.
It's a lot of, yeah. I can understand why data scientists are so needed.
Absolutely. Wow. That's amazing. To switch gears a little bit, what would you wish that you had known when you started this side of your career, the product management side of it?
Yeah. It's a great question. I think one big realization, which also we spoke about in this example, was uh, with B2C products, when you're coming from a B2C space, the metrics that go into, let's say, engagement or retention or user adoption, acquisition, are far more straightforward to establish because you're building some software tool and then you're seeing how do the metrics get impacted, and it's clear. Measuring success is more obvious. When one works on platform, and especially working on machine learning where there are a lot of different variables, it's not so easy to establish success. Really having a good understanding of those business-facing metrics and having a way to attribute the contribution of ML is one critical piece that I learned. It took me some time to learn how to do that, but it was very important. It was a huge unlock. I can give you a separate example apart from Moderna. When in my time during my work at Amazon AGI, I worked on the ML loop for training data. So we had these human loop workflows. I created some ML models to improve quality and speed of generating training data. And when you're launching LLMs, it's so hard to attribute what training data created what impact. So it's like hard to say that these 5 fields that you generated for me or these 5 rows created 10% improvement in precision. But we had to figure out like how to break down the process, how to think about our metrics in a more structured way so that we could start to attribute that impact. There are two reasons why this is needed. One, of course, as you're working in a big organization, it's important for the business to know what you're contributing to it for everybody involved in the team.
Yes.
But second, if one doesn't have that line of thinking, when things don't go as planned or per expectation, we don't know what went wrong, and then we're floundering, right? So it was an important unlock for me in previous roles and this one as well.
Yeah, so figuring out how the changes that you're making are impacting not just the performance, but also the business.
Exactly. And folks talk about observability of the metrics in machine learning. Like I've heard this word a lot, but really, truly, it's like, can you attribute it to an actual user-facing metric or not? That, in my mind, that's the gist of it. Having all of this, like cool dashboards and everything is helpful, but that's the core of what I felt was needed.
And that goes back to putting something in a user's hands and seeing how they like it.
Exactly.
Cool. I just wanted to give you a minute at the end to share with us anything you like to say about what you're currently working on, or whatever else you'd like to share.
Yeah, absolutely. So I will say a bit about, of course, like not sharing anything confidential. So the current role that I'm in is a lot about uncovering new capabilities beyond what we've seen around agentic workflows. So how can you use machine learning and other sort of more nascent fields, such as even emotion AI, and incorporate agentic workflows and merge that together to come up with an interesting product. So we are working in the family wellness space. A lot of what we're trying to do is build habit forming technology, but in a way which is helpful to users, as it's additive versus something that distracts them. So
dark design.
Yeah, exactly. So not having dark patterns around use of habit forming apps, and how do you ensure that it's built in a way that's helpful to customers. So we are using everything I've spoken about so far to build a product for family wellness. And it's a very cool and interesting space to be. We're still discovering and learning what our users want. And I'm very excited about what comes.
Very cool. And how do we keep up to date with the releases that your company is going to have in the future?
We will have press releases and announcements, and there will certainly be a lot of public information released as the time comes. And I'm excited to keep everyone in the loop when that happens.
And that's Panasonic Well.
It is.
Okay. Well, Thank you very much, Prerna. I really appreciate you being here, and I am going to listen to this again and learn more from what you said. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, and it was wonderful speaking to you and everyone on the call. Thanks again.
Thanks for listening. I made this podcast because I want to be the person at the city gate to talk to every person coming in and out, doing great things with AI, and find out what and why, and then share the learnings with everyone else. It would mean a lot if you could share the episode with someone that you think would like it. And if you know someone who would be a great person for me to talk to, let me know. Please reach out to me at Daniel Maneri on LinkedIn, or shoot an email to daniel@maneri.house, which is Daniel@MANARY.HAUS. Thanks for listening.